Hey friends, welcome back. Now in the last video we enriched our data, so that means now we have in our location table the additional columns, or the additional column it's actually the population with the newest data, and now we want to actually load the data into our Power BI file. So before we do this, however, I want to do the same with the web query as what I've done with the sales. So let me just right click for the web query here and say I don't want to enable the load, so I untick this option. So you might to see this possible data loss warning, but for it, that's fine. I click on continue here, that is fine. For my location here, you can still see if I go in here, the specific table in here, so the data is still there, that's fine for us. And we do not load the web query inside our model because we don't need it, right? We only need the specific column from the location. So far so good. If you are done, click on close and apply. And then what you should see is that all the tables get loaded, which are here now in the field list. And you see that the web query as well as the 3 sales tables, of course, are not available in here. If you've come so far, I would encourage you to click on save. So just save the file one time at the beginning, just to make sure that you do not lose anything, just in case you close Power BI or it crashes for some reason. I already did that and I named it Power BI Advanced Training. So you can do that quite easily. Press Ctrl S or click on the save disk here and save it under a proper name. After this, we have all the tables in the model. And this time, as you can see here, there are much more tables in this model as we have had before in our beginners one table Power BI file. That is why we need to set up the relations now. And to do this, we will go to the third window here to the model view. Just click the model view and take a closer look of what the data looks like. So let me just zoom out, Control and use my mouse wheel. You can also click on the minus and the plus symbols here to zoom in and zoom out. And you'll see that Power BI already actually added some relations between the tables. What I mean by that is if I drag my sales table, and I personally like a structure to add my facts table, which is in this case the sales, at the bottom, and drag all the other dimension tables on top. So maybe place this here, and the customer maybe here as well. More space here, and like that, for instance, right? Like that. So you don't have to do this. I just prefer to have my facts table here at the bottom, so my sales table, and all the filter tables, so the dimension tables on top. So most of them already have a relation. The relation is the simply connection here between the tables. And you can see if you hover over a relation, also the specific columns which are used for relations are highlighted. In this case, it's location ID for the location table. And if I go over product, I would see it's related to the product ID in both tables. The reason Power BI by default is picking this relation up is because the columns have the same name. So if columns have the same name or almost the same name, then Power BI normally picks this up by default. If you do not deselect this option in the options and settings, which you can do under files, if you don't want to have Power BI figure out those relations automatically, you can untick this if you want. But for us now, it has done this automatically, and it's created the relations like that. The only relation which is currently missing is in our dates table here, which we created. There is no relation to the, in this case, order date in the sales table. So we need to set up this relation between those two columns ourselves. But that's fine because it's quite easy. So we can see exactly how that works. All we need to do is we simply use here, this one, and per drag and drop, we can drop it here onto the date, so order date here, drop it there, and now you see there's also a relation, which is a 1 to star, which means one to many relation between the dates table here, if I hover with it, and the sales table using the order date. So just scroll up here, so you can see that highlighted here. You see that the relation is now in place between those two tables using those two columns. So that's how easy it is to create relations. So just in case you have deselect this option to auto-detect relations, or you want to do this manually yourself, simply drag and drop the fields on top of each other and the relation is established. The reason why we have one-to-many relations or one-to-star is kind of simple, because we have the location ID only appearing once in the location table, because here it gives you for each location only one entry. But of course in the sales table, the location ID appears several times, because we sell of course to the same city to several customers, right? That is why location ID is appearing there several times, and that is why we have the star here. The star only means that the location ID here, the field, is appearing several times, not only once. And that's why we have a one-to-star relationship or one-to-many. If you're familiar with databases, you know what I'm talking about, and if not, that's the reason why I want to talk a little bit more about that here. So also, the filter direction here is from the one side to the many side. That's the default behavior and also best practice in Power BI. That means that you can use the dimension tables, so all of them above, and use fields from here to filter the sales or facts table down there. And not the other way around. Meaning the sales table is not there to filter the other tables. That's why you normally have this one-to-many relationship and also the filter direction from the one side to the many side. If you want to learn more about the relation, you can also right-click on a relation and go to Properties. And if you do that, then you can see here there's more information about the relationship itself. So you see from which table to which table. So from sales to location. Maybe it's a little bit misleading because actually the one side is here from location to sales. But you also see here it's from sales to location, and here it's specified as many to one. Many to one simply means it's star on the many side, which is from the sales table because it's listed here first, and then to the one side only appearing one in the location table. And the cross filter direction here is single, which means that the one side, so this table location, is filtering the sales table. You could make it both if you want. If you tick this option and you would click OK, you'll now see that the arrow is pointing in both directions. That means that you can also use columns from the sales table to filter the location table. So you can specify the direction, the filter direction to both. However, as I said, best practice, let me just right click here and go to Properties. By the way, you can also double click on the relation here to open the window. But the best practice is that you have a single filter direction from the one side to the many side. So that's why I leave the default one here. And also this relationship should be active. That's fine. And you see that what's highlighted here, this window looks kind of similar to the merge. Remember what we did in the Power Query editor? That's also highlighted with this darker background, which are the two columns which the relationship is using. If you want to modify that, you can, for instance, go here and choose another column like that. But of course, you see that this doesn't work. It also tells me in this case here that this is an issue here. It doesn't make sense. I just wanted to show you that's how you actually do it. You just pick the specific column in here from both of the tables. Now they are highlighted, selected, and then you click OK. The cardinality is many to one. You can modify it here also as one to one, one to many, and many to many. However, most often you want to create a data model where you have a many to one relationship or one to many, depending on which side of the table is listed first. But you have, in this case here, the one to many relationship and also a single filter direction. So that's fine. I click OK. And now we're good to go and have our original one to many and also the filter direction in here back. What else do we have? Well, inside the model view, we have the option to hide specific tables from the model. So currently, if I go back to my report view, you see that all the tables in here are available and also all the columns from these tables. But if, for instance, I'd say I go to the model view here and I don't want to show the location table, I can simply click on this little eye here, the symbol, tick it, and now everything here is hidden. And if I go back to my report view, you see that there is no location table available in here. So that's how you can hide tables from the fields list in here. And if you go back to the model view, you can also do this individually. So if you hover over one of the specific column entries here, you can also click on the eye here to hide specific columns, like area code, for instance. Because now, if I go to the report view and go to my location table, you see that area code is not available here. So that's how you can hide specific columns or even complete tables if you want to do that in the model view. So the difference here is if you remove columns or even tables or disable the load inside the Power Query editor, then of course those tables are not available at all. But if you only hide them in here, this means that they are not hidden, they are not visible, they are hidden, but of course you can enable the view anytime. And also other people who work with your reports can enable the visibility again. So they are still available, but maybe you don't use them right now. You can just hide them if you want to do that. Other options in here is you can go in here under the properties. If you don't select anything here under properties, there is these options like show the database in header when applicable. So if you tick this option and you would have tables from databases, then those informations would be visible here as well, or what kind of database, for instance. Also, show related fields when card is collapsed. So for instance, if I collapse the card here, you see that location ID is still visible because this is the relevant, in this case, column, which is connected or which connects our location table to our sales table. So if you want to make sure that this is also always visible, even if you collapse a table, you can do that here, right? So it's up to you whether that's important for you as well. And you can also pin related fields to the top of the card. So also, for instance, if I click on product here, or actually don't need to select anything, I click on simply, yes, I want to pin then you'll see that the product ID here is now moved to the first entry in the product table here. Because the product ID is the relevant column to connect our sales table and the product table. If you untick this, you'll see that before there was cost on the top, I think. So you can do that. It's not required to do that, but this is available in here. Also, if you click on the three dots here next to the eye, there are also some additional information and options, like you can refresh data. By the way, I talked about this. You can refresh data in two ways. Either you click up here in refresh, or you click here in refresh. So what's the difference? The difference is the following. If you have a really big model and you only modified one table, then if you click on refresh in the ribbon bar, the issue is that all tables get refreshed, which can take some time, especially if you have a big model. On the other hand, if you go to the model view, which we are currently in, and select a table and then click on refresh, this means that only the specific table you have selected gets refreshed. So this can speed up the refresh process. As I said, especially if you have a large model. So this could be helpful for you. You can edit the query if you want to do that. If you click this option here, then the Power Query editor opens again, and then you can modify here the specific table if you want to do that. You can do that from the model view. You can also directly do it, as we've seen, from the report view if you want to do that. Let me just close it. There's nothing to do for us right now. And other options here is manage relationships. If you tick this option, then you see here the current relationships which are available and also applied. So from the sales table, in this case, these are all the relationships we currently use to the specific dimension tables. So all of those relationships, which you can see here, the one-to-many connections, are also visible here and can be edited here as well. Just select the one you want to change and then go to edit, and then you can modify it here as well. So it's the same way it works. You can also delete relationships or also create new relationships if you want to do that. Let me just close this here. Let's have another look. What's also available in here? There is this incremental refresh. This could be interesting if you have applied that. There's a specific setup you need to enable first in order to incremental refresh your data. This could be interesting if you have 10 years of data, but you only want to refresh the last month, for instance. Manage aggregations is related to any kind of aggregated tables which you might create. Think about the group by feature which we used. Or also if you have any kind of additional aggregation tables prepared up front, for instance in the database you import, then this could also be interesting to click on this manage aggregation feature here and adjust it here and specify what kind of aggregation do you have in here. So that is that. you can delete it from model. This also works here as well. You can select columns from this table if you want to do that. You can hide it in report view. The same is true as you click on the eye here and cross it out directly, same as here. And you can collapse it and expand it. These are the options you have for each table individually. Just check the table and then modify here whatever you want to adjust in here. Same is true in here, right? Beside this, if you select one of the tables, you see that the property window here changes, right? If I untick everything, you have these three options. We talked about that. But if you select one of the tables, you can see more here. And here you have the option to rename the table if you want to do that. You can also edit some kind of description to give, well, you or also other people who work with your data in your report additional information here. So this is only interesting and relevant for other developers of the report, right? Not for the end consumer. You can add synonyms to a table. This is helpful for the Q&A feature in Power BI. So currently, if you, for instance, refer to product in the Q&A feature, then Power BI would know you are referring to the product table. But if you, for instance, refer to specific names which are not directly linked normally to the product table, then Power BI would not be able to figure out that your report consumer, for instance, is referring to product. Let's say you sell energy drinks, and if he or she is searching for energy, then you would have to specify here as a synonym energy. And then Power BI would be able to figure out, okay, if someone is referring to energy, then he or she means the product table. So that you need to specify here as synonyms inside. Row label and key column, this is related to Excel, so we can skip this for now because it's not really important for us. Is hidden. Again, you can tick this option here. You see that then the product table itself is now crossed out. It is not visible in the model. That's what this can do for you. So it's a third way to do it in here. Feature table, also not relevant for us now, so I will skip this here. And under advanced, we have a storage mode. This, on the other hand, can be very interesting and very important, depending on what kind of data you have. Because you see that the storage mode currently is import. And the import mode is normally the best mode because it's the fastest way in Power BI. However, sometimes you have really large data sources, or you have maybe the requirement that you need to use live data. So if you need to have live data or a direct query, then you can see here that there are other storage modes, like direct query, for instance. Direct query means real-time data from the underlying source. This means that the data is not imported in Power BI, but instead you use really a real-time connection to the underlying data source, like for instance a database. And then the storage mode could be direct query. And the storage mode here can be set for various tables here individually, like import, direct query, and dual. I can't specify this here because when we use Excel, we can only import the data. And also, as a best practice tip, whenever you can work with import data, use that, because that's the fastest way for the Power Query engine, and your report will load the fastest. Direct query, as I said, if you really need real-time live connection, then this would be the way to go. Also, if you have data which is so big that you can't import it, then you would also have to refer to direct query. And dual mode means that the table is in, let's say, a state between import and direct query. And depending on how you query the data, so what kind of visual you display and what kind of data you currently show in a report in the interaction, then one of those modes would be used. This is dual mode. So these are the three import modes and storage modes, just that you heard that. But most often, if you can, rely to import mode. So import the data in Power BI and then use the imported data because it's the fastest way. So that's it for storage. And that's basically the most important things for the model view here. So you can customize this the way you want. Just make sure what's most important, of course, is setting up the relationships between the tables you have in the model. Because if those relationships here are not set up correctly, then of course you don't have the option to filter and slice and dice the data based on the other tables. So setting up the relationships here in the model view, that's the most important crucial thing here, okay? One final thing before I forget it is when you select an individual column in here, for instance, for location table here, I could go to population, tick this option, then you see that the property window changes here as well. So you can here rename a specific column, you can enter description to make it more descriptive, also synonyms for this column if you want to do that, and you can also create folders. For instance, if I say this is location numeric, for instance, because it's a number field, numeric, and I would press enter, then you see that now I have created actually a folder inside my table. So this is just for structuring. Just in case you have a lot of columns, it might help you to structure them and to group them together. It's not required, but if you want to do this, you can do that. And the same is true to remove it. Just remove everything in here, just get rid of it, press enter, and you'll see that now the folder is gone again. So it's up to you whether you want to do that. The hidden option is here as well. So you can tick that here and you see that now this column is hidden, but you can also do the same if you simply click on the eye just to hide the column. And what could be interesting to you maybe is that you can also specify not only the data type here directly, so the ones we already know here can be selected, but also one below, the format. So if it's a whole number, you can specify here, leave it whole number, you can use decimal number, or you can also choose custom, in this case formats, which you're familiar from Excel. You know, these hash symbols with a comma and 0.0, and if you want to put negative values in parentheses and so on, you just go to custom here, and then you can specify a custom file option here. So you can see here there are a few examples in here, but you can also really type in here exactly what you want for the format. For me now, I leave it general in here, but I just wanted to mention that. If you want to or have a percentage column, you can simply tick on percentage here. So yes, and then you see that the format is switched to percentage. Thousand separators can be placed, and also the decimal places here can also be adjusted for this specific column. So let me just untick this because it's not true here. I just wanted to add this here to our video just to make sure that you also understand that, and you can apply that if you want. So that's it actually for our data preparation, our model setup and the structure. In the next video, we dive deeper into reports and DAX. So thanks a lot for watching. Hopefully you understood what we did, and I hopefully see you as soon as possible in the next video. Until then, best guys.